Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verses 28 to 37 will be covered in today's presentation. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query or question. General guidelines about these presentations. What I've done over here is that I thought some background to preparing these presentations should be shared, and this will set the scene right. The main focus in these presentations is on the development of the human self, i.e., all those aspects which the Quran has noted about the human psyche, its strengths and weaknesses are brought to the fore for our education and training. Because we don't have a system of Deen around us, so there is no point in going into those details at this stage of our self-development. We need to look at our own psyche as much as possible in the light of the Quran. The verses are not analyzed in detail by looking at the root of each word, because this is not only time consuming, but is not required at this stage of the establishment of the system of Deen. Because we'll get lost. Each word which is used in the Quran has a number of meanings. And if we discuss those in the overall context of Deen, then it is going to take a lot of time. This will be the duty of those who deal with the finer aspects of legislating for the sub-clauses under the system of Deen. However, any developed self will be able to contribute to any future effort in this direction. I think all of us who have shared these presentations, we are now in a position to go through the Quran using the Lughatul Quran and figure out many aspects ourselves. Most of the meanings are taken directly from the writings of Allama Pervez and are then explained with examples from our life's events as of today. This helps to relate the teaching of the Quran to our thinking in our daily life. The aim is to raise our eminence at a higher level where we can grasp the salient aspects of the system of Deen. Once we convince ourselves of the need for Deen and its benefits to mankind, then we understand the need for a developed self, which is the focus of the Quran, i.e., these developed selves then form a Jamaat by coming together willingly to strive on the path of Allah. So all of us who are sharing these presentations together on this platform, I will call them a Jamaat, because this is how we have managed to remove our differences and we are playing to the same music. Recap so far. Through the Quran, we acquire knowledge of the system of Deen and its finer details which aid in understanding Rububiyyat in the universe. Wahi was sent to mankind through the medium of the messengers of Allah, all of whom were human beings. The universe was created in 6 stages and the earth was made suitable for the sustenance of man who possesses choice and intent. The law of requital was put in place so that each and every deed of man manifests its outcome. Time was created through the alteration of day and night to make man aware of his finite physical existence in this world. Mankind is one brotherhood, and the aim of the Quran is to bring all humanity together after removing their differences so that fear and grief disappears from the human world. While treading on the path of Deen, results take time to manifest their outcomes. Hence, there is a need to remain steadfast and display patience. Patience is very important in these things. We at times get impatient that we are not getting the results. We should always keep it in mind that we are working with Allah, with whom time is infinite. Iman and Saleh deeds have a higher scale in terms of contributing to the development of the human self. The path of Islam is called Sirat-e-Mustaqim, which is straight, balanced, and well-established. The question of creating ourselves, do others create it or do we create it, and the ratio between the two. Here I've drawn 3 schematics. I thought these will set the scene for today's presentation, because we have to look at our own psyche, that how much of this psyche is influenced by majority around us that is trying to conform with them because we have to earn a living, and how much of it is based on our own deliberate decision making. First is a crowd over here. Probably they're cheering some concert. Each one of them has an intrinsic value by virtue of possessing a self. Nafs, which is based on divine energy, all of them have, which has the potential and capacity to grow and develop for eternity. So the point is, all of these people around the world, they have a self. They have their own intrinsic value as defined by the Quran. If each one is contributing to the world around us, then we can understand the significance of each one of them. So when we look at the world around us and we see the problems, our mind should go to the whole of humanity and see that each one of us has a self and what exactly they are doing and contributing to the environment in which we are living on this planet. Second one is over here in the context of what is going on in Qatar, the World Football. Our stay here is finite, hence the time available to us needs to be valued by applying a cost-benefit analysis. All those activities in life which divert us from the higher purpose of life need to be carefully recognized and critically assessed. In a world rife with problems created by human hands, does this make sense? And this is just to draw our attention to what is going on in the world. All these human beings, they are paid for it and they're sitting there. What problem will be solved of humanity at the end of this World Cup? And that is the question we need to ask. Next is, this is some kind of a political gathering. Pharaohs in every era attract the masses. When we do not appreciate the existence of our inherent potentials, then we get carried away by the machinations of the man-devised systems. It's very easy to come out and be part of a big gathering, which is meaningless and aimless and a waste of time. And we should keep it in mind that what impact my activity over here will contribute to my own hereafter, because time is extremely important. So we should carry out a cost-benefit analysis and not let these things become part of ourself. The Quran puts before us our own potential eminence and loftiness as a fact. These human beings need to be reminded of their intrinsic value first, a task assigned to Mu'mineen. I'm sure if each one of them are informed that the path which they have taken by coming together like this is not going to benefit them. And that is what we mean by cost-benefit analysis in the light of the Quran. The Quran helps to acquire understanding of human reality, the purpose of creation, the issues of human life, the system of Deen, the ultimate reality. It provides an answer to every question arising in the human mind in relation to human existence and more. And this is the effort we are making to see that what is in the Quran for us individually and then collectively. Now let us go to first two verses for our today's presentation. We witness shirk in all forms around us. وَيَوْمَ نَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا ثُمَّ نَقُولُ لِلَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا مَكَانَكُمْ أَنْتُمْ وَشُرَكَاؤُكُمْ فَزَيَّلْنَا بَيْنَهُمْ وَقَالَ شُرَكَاؤُهُمْ مَا كُنْتُمْ إِيَّانَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ in kunna an ibadatikum la ghafilin. The meanings, when we will bring them all together, then we will inform those people who used to do shirk. And we know shirk means contaminating Allah's laws with human laws or human thinking. That you and those whom you used to declare as our partners remain in your places. Then they will be separated from each other. At this, those entities whom they used to declare as partners of Allah will say to them that this is wrong, that you used to worship us on our saying so. Allah is a witness to this fact, and His evidence is sufficient to make a decision about our claim and your claim, that we had absolutely no knowledge of this, that you used to worship us, never mind us asking that you worship us. Some further reflections on these two verses. When the Quran instructs to gather together, we generally think that it is a congregation of human beings as physical beings only. No doubt this is part of this aspect of coming together, because whatever we do individually is as part of the collective life in this world. There is another aspect as well in which the outcomes of our deeds join us, and we ultimately end up seeing the tangible evidence of what we have done in our past life. This is where the creation of ourself and its significance come into play. Next is the Quran here in its unique style is presenting before our eyes that state of the human self which fails to develop because of the contamination of shirk. Because when we follow the human beings or follow man-made laws and mix them up with Allah's laws, then we do not get benefit, rather we are harmed. if we carry around man-made chains and some false concepts of Allah, then essentially we are consigning ourselves to a doomed end. The biggest deception which man creates is that he becomes deceived by the riches and prosperity of this life, which he acquires due to a grossly unjust system. Verse 10:28 is a warning for us to become alive to the world in which we reside and its contraptions which create distractions for human beings and prevent their thinking from going in the direction of seeking guidance. Because the whole point of living this life before coming to the Quran is to seek guidance. And once we have found the guidance, then making best use of it. Then remain focused and intensely follow it and analyze the world around us. Now, next slide, remaining vigilant of own psyche. Here Allah has warned us not to follow any human being as a model, and those who do follow human beings end up losing everything in life in relation to the life of the hereafter. We have seen the pictures of three crowds, and what are they doing? They are following human beings. That means once they follow the human beings, they lose their own intrinsic value by virtue of possessing choice and intent. When the Quran states that your partners will abandon you, in fact, we abandon our own self because we do not value it properly. Allah is making a statement of fact. We witness in our life, for example, when a politician is caught doing wrong as per man-made laws, no one comes to his aid. I put down this comment because right in a man-made world even, people are for themselves. And people who are extremely selfish are the way system is made, then even their own friends leave them, abandon them. In a very corrupt setup, the politician is not apprehended for a long time. In verse 10:29, the Quran has summed up very concisely that in the human world, Allah does not need the assistance of any human being, and it declares, وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ إِن كُنَّا عَنْ عِبَادَاتِكُمْ لَا غَافِلِينَ. Since he is present everywhere, hence he himself is witness on every self. So that is at a very fundamental level, because Allah has pointed to the working of the law of requital repeatedly, that we should be all the time aware of what we are thinking and what we do. We know how the law of requital functions through the inbuilt accountability of ourself. But that does not mean that in the collective life, we should leave it to the human beings to keep doing whatever they want. This is the duty of Jamaat-e-Momineen, that they should, as and when, if they get power, they should put the system right. Since all these verses are for Mu'mineen and Muttaqeen, hence Allah is asking us to train ourselves in every respect using this guidance and acquire that eminent and elevated psyche which is placed within our reach. Now, additional reflections on these two verses. Here we need to remain aware of our thought process, that we do not give a place in it to anyone who does not meet the strict minimum criterion of the Quranic Muttaqi. This is in our interest because if such people find a place in our cognition, then they will fail to meet our expectations, which we have defined precisely in the light of the Quran. That is, that if we somehow put some significance on these people, then we should check it in the light of the Quran, that where they are and whether they are guided or not, whether they're seeking guidance or not. Another point about which the Quran has cautioned us is that those people to whom we attach our hopes and certain expectations, are they aware of your expectations from them or not? There's no point in having an expectation with a so-called leader, and that leader does not know that what expectations we have with him. And beauty of the Quran is that all the expectations which Allah has asked us to put in him, all those are specified, and he is going to fulfill them if we follow his laws. And that is the beauty of having expectations with Allah. And we know that unguided minds in this world, they follow their own desires. They have nothing to do with the public. And that is important. We should keep it in mind when we are going through the Quranic verses like this. If not, then we need to make them aware and let them explain whether the hopes and expectations associated with them are realistic or not. The whole point here is that Allah is admonishing us to take our finite physical life extremely seriously, because Quran is trying to save us our time. It is putting a lot of emphasis on making use of time effectively by being on Sirat-e-Mustaqim so that we do not waste our energies in pursuing wrong things in life, and to take the message of the Quran with the respect it deserves so that we get the best out of it both individually and collectively before we leave for the next abode of Deen. Now let us go to the next verse, 10:30. Expectations need to be verified by Allah. Hunalika tablu kullu nafsin ma aslafat wa ruddu ilallahi mawlahumul haqqi wa dalla anhum makanu yaftarun. Hence, whatever a man will have done previously, it will manifest clearly in front at that time, and all deeds will be returned towards the law of requital of Allah. He alone is the custodian of this true balance and the guardian. And whatever people used to do according to their self-created concepts, all that will go to waste, i.e., it will not produce that outcome which they had in their minds. And this is a great disappointment human beings are going to have because they are following Zann, and this aspect will come before us later on. They have been following, which is not Haqq, which is not truth. Only that deed is productive which is performed according to the law of Allah. The gravity of this thought, gravity of this aspect takes time to sink into our minds because we take it very superficially. We just go through it, not putting our heart and soul into it, trying to figure out that what Quran is trying to tell us. It is trying to remind us that our place in this world is for a finite time. A life free from fear is possible. Ultimately, human deeds will catch up with them, and if this takes place after the time of respite has ended, then any regret and disappointment will be of no use. Here, the Quran has asked us to think through this statement of fact because we do witness the state of people who commit crimes even in man-made systems. In fact, some man-made systems are extremely unforgiving. For example, what happens to human beings born with a darker skin in the US? And this is a great lesson for us as well, who are following the Quran and trying to make better use of our life, is that don't get on the wrong side of man-made systems because these man-made systems are extremely unforgiving. And if we end up, for example, even for something which we haven't done and we end up in a prison, that will be a gross waste of our valuable time in this life. However, the Quran does not want us to come to its guidance with the fear of punishment. It invites us to work with Allah as a companion to carry out those responsibilities which Allah as Rabb has taken on himself. In fact, Quran says that if we come to the Quran, we will understand fear and huzn and its nature in the man-made system. And secondly, by having Iman in Allah, we will overcome this tendency of our brain to become fearful. Because fear, even if it is on a subconscious level, it affects our potentials. It states as a permanent value, La ikraha fi Deen, qad tabayyana ar-rushdu min al-ghayyi faman yakfur bit-taghut wa yu'min billah. Fear is meant to be eliminated through the Quran. Over here, Quran, we have gone through this verse previously that Allah has said that there is no compulsion in Deen. If we have come to the Quran under some compulsion, then we should try to address it. Quran is making both paths of life, evil and righteous one, clear before us. And we have to use our intellect, our rational side, by using the Quranic guidance and then accept Iman in Allah through our free volition. And there should be absolutely no compulsion, either external or internal. It should be a willingness to follow this path, thinking that this is the one which I'm looking for. It's just like this, that when we feel hungry, we go and take food. And that is not a favor we are doing. That is a requirement of our body. So Iman is the requirement of our own self, but it has to come through our own voluntary volition and voluntary decision-making. Understanding the laws of Allah helps us to add value to our thoughts and deeds. Just reflect on the language of the Quran. وَدَلَّ عَنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَفْتَرُونَ. So whatever they were doing, it is because of that, informing us that factually, if we remained focused on the conveniences of this life and did not think of the higher purpose, then we will subject ourselves to a rude shock when the results of our deeds will join us later in life. Let us go to the next verse. Life and death are linked. Look for signs. Kul man yarzukum minas samai wal ardi amman yamliku sam'a wal absara wa man yukhrijul hayya minal mayyiti wa yukhrijul mayyita minal hayyi wa man yudabbirul amra fasayakuluna allaha faqul afala tattaqun. I have highlighted wa man yudabbirul amra. I'll go through this aspect in slightly more detail in slides, but concentrate here, please. Afala tattaqun. That if we become muttaqi, then what is stated here will become very clear. O Rasool, ask them, who is the one who provides means of sustenance for you through the bounties of the heavens and the earth? Who is the one in whose control are the sources of your knowledge, hearing, and sight? Who is the one who makes life emerge from inanimate things and keeps bringing forth dead things from living things? And this is a continuous process before our eyes in the world and in the universe. In summary, who is running the affairs of the whole system of the universe? You will witness that in response, they will immediately reply that he is Allah. And Allah over here means people say God and whatever kind of concept they have made, but they do accept that there is some higher authority. Say to them that when you acknowledge that in the whole universe it is Allah's law which is in place and functioning, then why you do not observe his laws in your society? Why do you think that when it is Allah's law functioning in the external universe that your communal life is out with the limits of his sovereignty? That his law does not function in it, this concept is absolutely batil, brings forth evil results. The being who is Allah in the universe, i.e. whose control and authority is in the outer universe, he is also Allah of the earth. Human social and economic life should also be under the obedience of his law. So what Quran is saying is that by not following Allah's laws, you have created hell in your own world. And if you come to Allah's laws, there will be peace and quiet as in the outer universe. Further reflections. Here the Quran returns to the outer physical world and points to the hydrological cycle which sustains life on the planet. There are two aspects of this physical phenomenon operating spectacularly at a gigantic scale. It provides clean water across the globe for sustaining life. It also provides the means to meet needs aesthetically. Just imagine the beauty of a lush green valley anywhere in the world. So it is not only in the physical sense, but in an aesthetic sense, because we are given aesthetic feelings as well, and we appreciate beauty, and that is also something we should keep it in mind. Animals don't have this, whereas we have, and not only we have this potential, this ability to express our opinion and our pleasure and in looking at, for example, the scenery around us, but also to convey it to others and also to paint it and write it down. So we've got tremendous potentials on these things to which the Quran is drawing our attention. The next part needs our deepest reflection when it states, وَمَنْ يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتَ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. That is, death comes out of life and life comes out of death. The intrinsic relationship between the ongoing process of life and death. It is sad that we humans have focused our attention solely towards the physical side of it and have not yet fully looked into the life of the metacognitive side of ourselves. Though there is a lot of work done, but Quran is going far, far beyond and far ahead of what human beings have figured out so far. There are certain things which can never be figured out in relation to our metacognitive abilities except by going through the Quran. In the domain of the self, Allah has given us the sole authority to do whatever we like with its potentials, great initiative and a supreme idea of novel creation. Being a creator himself, and over here Quran has said in 23:14, فَتَبَارَكَ ahsanul khaliqeen. So Allah also recognizes the creation carried out by human beings, but he calls himself as ahsanul khaliqeen. And he wants us to also add husn to the world in which we live. And of course, add husn to our own personalities, our own self. Creating another being and inviting him, her to help create a new self to carry out the responsibilities of Rububiyat within his sphere of operation, and to then watch the outcome of his own efforts. Let us go to the next slide. providing man with full authority and control over the planet to play with the laws of life and death, i.e., in the physical domain, but also in the domain of the human self, whether to acquire new life himself and also to create a new world which can help others to acquire a new life. All is placed within his reach and sent down the Quran for this purpose, with all explained in detail, as a help for his intellect to achieve that eminence which is linked to the system of Deen of the hereafter. These things might appear as daunting and something impossible when we look at the world around us, but Quran is placing these things within our reach individually, and we can do it. And this is the whole purpose of our coming together and going through these verses and seeing that what is in it for me. Then he did not dissociate himself from the human world and declared emphatically to Mu'mineen that وَمَنْ يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ, his amr behind everything, that try to understand that whatever is going on in this world, it is not Allah has dissociated himself from that. There is an amr, and then that amr leads to Haqq. There is no point in having an amr, and if it does not lead to Haqq, it does not lead to creation. And that is the way human beings work as well. When we plan, when we think, and then we start creating in the physical world. And emphasized it further through وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُمْ, that Allah is with us wherever we are. That is our thoughts are linked to that medium where whatever we try to do and make effort, we can get the results. Allah is with you wherever you are. This statement of fact is for the use of Mu'mineen exclusively. These things, those human beings cannot understand who haven't come to the Quran. I've tried it, because when I've talked to them and expressed this, you see totally expressionless faces in front of you, and they will just leave. And this is something important, that something which has a very profound and deep impact on ourselves does not leave even any iota of impact on others. Why? Because they haven't come to the Quran. They haven't made Allah as their model. And they think that this is all meaningless. It doesn't make sense to them. The verse then guides us by saying that فَقُلْ أَفَلَا تَتَّقُونَ, you will only understand these facts when you become muttaqi. Read this part in reverse order, that if you become muttaqi, then you will understand what is being stated earlier in this verse, that Allah brings out life from death and death from life. So this cycle of life and death has a purpose. There is a law working behind it. There is an amr behind it. Otherwise, you will keep going round in circle. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. This book in which there is no doubt, and this provides guidance to muttaqi, because it removes the doubts and suspicions of those who wish to become muttaqi. Become muttaqi and then see the results. Let us go through the next two verses, 32 and 33. Remain within Allah's pattern. فَذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمُ الْحَقُّ فَمَاذَا بَعْدَ الْحَقِّ إِلَّا الضَّلَالُ فَأَنَّى تُصْرَفُونَ كَذَلِكَ حَقَّتْ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّكَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ فَسَقُوا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. A lot covered here. This is Allah, your real Rabb, who is responsible for the nourishment of the external universe and also for the nourishment of the human world. To be Allah only suits him. Now just consider what can be the outcome of rejecting the laws of such an Allah other than misguidance. Ask them, by forsaking this Allah, in which direction do you wish to turn your faces? A good reminder for us, and the more we go through it, the more comes out of these verses for the benefit of our own self. And it actually strengthens our iman, that the path which we are following is the true path, and it is leading us where we wish to go, the defined goal of eternity. If these people do not accept iman in the law of Allah, even after these clear reasonings, then consider that this law of Allah has become true in relation to them. That those people who, having abandoned the correct path, go astray in all directions, they are not the ones that accept iman in the law of Allah. So, la yuminun, that they are not going to accept it. And these are the indicators for us, signs for us, so that we do not waste our efforts on some people who do not want to come to the Quran. For example, if we have given them the message, we have passed on the books to them, and they don't want to read them, and they do not want to come in this direction. Just leave them alone. Don't waste any of your thoughts on them. Even a passing thought which comes, we should recognize it and then dispel it, because it will slow us down. Verses 32, 33, criterion for getting best from our cognitive potentials. Continuing from verse 10, 31, Allah has reminded us to always keep before ourselves that فَذَلِكُمُ Rabbukumul Haqq. So starting from Allah with all his attributes, then Quran goes to Rububiyat, Rabb, and says this is Al-Haqq because it is going to produce constructive results. This Allah and his being Rabb will help to recognize the purpose of your life, i.e. to support Haqq with a view to bring out the constructive results through your efforts by following the Quran. The Quran has then provided us with a line of reasoning that if Haqq is not followed, then your world will become unbalanced. For example, the word in 2022. This is what we need to tell everyone around us, that we need constructive outcomes of our efforts. We need to reject batil. I put down this year here, 2022, that is the year of recording this presentation and sharing it here. The idea is that maybe in 50 years' time, 100 years' time, someone going through these, and by then the path for Deen had been made very smooth, and it has made its appearance in some part of the land. At least they can look back in history and say where we were and how much distance they have covered to reach that stage. Then the Quran guides us in an important aspect of those who either reject the guidance of the Quran or twist it for their own nefarious ends, or those who just conform to the man-devised systems and live at a very basic animalistic level of existence. It says that observe carefully and intently that those who follow the wrong path of life and contribute to the chaos and imbalance in your world, they will not accept Iman. Because they are the ones who are contributing to this chaos and imbalance. They are part of that facade, which Quran says shedding blood and creating facade in the world. So we should not waste any of our efforts, including our thoughts on them, and remain concentrated and focused on with the task in front of us. This prevents us from making unrealistic expectations and saves our energy and efforts. We can use our thoughts on something better. This is part of our training. Best is to find some good book and read through it, particularly the philosophical type of books, because those help us to develop our thought process. Creation at fundamental level needs to be used as a sign for understanding the world around us and our place in it. قُلْ هَلْ مِنْ شُرَكَائِكُمْ مَنْ يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ قُلِ اللَّهُ يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقَ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ فَأَنَّىٰ تُؤْفَكُونَ. Ask them that the beings whom you consider as partners, is there such a being among them who could begin the creation of anything, and after that, by making it pass through various stages, by treading through various evolutionary phases, take it forward? Say to them that no one else can do it like this. It takes place only according to the law of Allah. He begins the creation, and by taking these created things through various stages, he takes these to their point of completion. So this is for us, that we should look at the creation around us in detail and see how precisely it has followed certain laws in the past and how it is still following those laws. Hence, when this is the reality, then in which direction are your convoluted thoughts taking you? Further reflections on this verse. Continuing on from the previous point here, the Quran has put forward another reasoning for our benefit. This points to the whole process of creation, which preceded the arrival of man. And of course, man himself went through a very precise and carefully planned and guided process of evolution by following the laws of Allah. If we read books like Darwin and others, evolutionary scientists, we will see that they don't go back to the creator, but they look at the creation and then they remain very conjectural and they pass on all kinds of opinion, whereas the Quran makes it very simple. If we accept Allah with all his attributes as a creator, then we will see that everything falls in place. Then Allah directly questions, just look at the scale of things and then consider deliberately whether any of your partners can do this. In fact, if we look at the creation around us and Allah being everywhere and listening to all what is going on in this world and controlling it himself, that is, his laws are working through his direction, then it gives us a lot of reassurance. Of course, there is an invisible part of it, but through the Quran, we can develop that kind of a conviction, and through our solid deeds within ourselves, that kind of assurance comes in, becomes developed, that we can start seeing the things which these verses are pointing to. The whole process of creation is repeatable into new forms and is very dynamic, and we as human beings possess the intellectual potentials to discover all the processes and laws in order to come to grips with the creation by Allah. Carrying around all our latent potentials and failing to make use of these, being unaware or not making any effort to discover these, or having doubts, and as a consequence living a miserable, frightened life, is a gross failure as a human being. If all this does not draw our attention and does not motivate us to look for the higher purpose of life, not just to live at animalistic level and conform with the majority, then essentially we have failed to rise to the requirement of the purpose of our creation as humans, possessing choice, intent, and consciousness. This will lead to only one conclusion, that we do not wish to be part of the aim of our creation, and we do not wish ourselves to acquire eminent eternal life. Because then we become an evidence against our own self. Only Allah can guide man. Qul hal min shurakaikum man yahdi ilal haqqi qul lillahu yahdi lil haqqi afaman yahdi ilal haqqi ahaqqa an yattaba amman la yahdi illa an yuhda. Famalakum kaifa tahkumun. Ask them that, is there any such power among these non-Allah powers whom you declare as partners of life, who can guide you towards such a program which is based on truth and is responsible for the establishment of concrete results? Say to them that this kind of guidance can only be available from the law of Allah. Say to them that when this is the reality, then tell me, can that law which provides this kind of guidance be deserving of this, that it should be obeyed? Or should those entities be obeyed who are in need of guidance from others for their own selves? Say to them that what has happened to you, that even after such clear evidences, you make wrong decisions. Allah's guidance is human self's need. The issue put before man is very straightforward. Does he wish to follow the guidance of another similar human being, which is a degradation of our own self, who himself is raw and does not know the higher purpose of life, or should he follow the one whose guidance everything else in the universe is following? And even the physical body of man is following, that is, our body follows the physical law of Allah. Here this question is put before man, that by following the laws of other human beings, he is enslaving himself, that his latent potentials can never emerge, and he needs to question this and then look at the choice provided by Allah. So if we are, for example, the crowds which I have shown at the beginning in our slide, if we are part of those crowds, then essentially that time in which we should be doing something more useful so that our potentials come out, we are wasting our time. And he needs to question this and then look at the choice provided by Allah. The world created around us is the outcome of following the laws made by men. Every country has its own laws which are at variance with each other. The same human beings are subjected to different laws. Is that justice? And this is something which we should concentrate all the time. Next, the Quran confronts us with the reality, those who themselves need guidance, should you obey them? So how can we obey someone who himself is lost in life, who himself haven't even thought about higher purpose of life, and we start following them just because they are rich, they are powerful? At least dissociate from them intellectually, put them at a place where they should be, and that is what Quran does. Here Allah presents guidance from his direction by stating that as I do not need guidance, hence I am the best to provide guidance. It is a powerful factual statement which needs our profound reflection. Then it is concluded, deny Allah's guidance and then live with the wrong consequences of man-devised systems, a perpetual state of fear and huzn. Without the Quran, we do not know Haqq, al-Haqq. Now, this is where I think today's presentation is going to benefit us a lot. وَمَن يَتَّبِعُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ إِلَّا ظَنًّا إِنَّ الظَّنَّ لَا يُغْنِي مِنَ الْحَقِّ شَيْئًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ بِمَا يَفْعَلُونَ. The reality is that most among them are those people who do not have any certain knowledge about reality, and they merely keep following speculation and conjecture. Whereas it is obvious that speculation and conjecture contain no reality in front of Haqq and certainty, and neither can it provide that effect which certain knowledge provides. Whatever these people do, it is in the knowledge of Allah. He knows how they follow behind mere conjectures. So associating ourselves with Allah and keeping Him as a model is the one which will make Haqq appear before us the way it is. The true reality of our existence and our life will manifest itself before our eyes. Now, some meanings of Zann, the word term used over there is Zann, and what I've done is I've taken some salient meanings of this root from Lughatul Quran. For other details, we should go and have a look. The root is given here, not evident or clear, something which is not evident or clear, and should we be following it? A belief in which there is some doubt. When there is a doubt in something, then it is doubtful. It is some inference which, when it becomes strong, then it is called knowledge. So it takes time for Zann to become knowledge, because only if we make an effort. If we don't make an effort, then Zann will remain Zann all our life. And this is the state of religious people. However, when it is weak, then it is conjecture. Sometimes this word may be used for knowledge. Linguists have stated that this word, on the one hand, appears in the meanings of doubt and conjecture, and on the other hand, in the meanings of knowledge and certainty. So there is a wide shade of meanings within this word. The Quran has used this word in opposition to knowledge and conviction and Haqq. Hence, Zann can never be taken in the meanings of knowledge and conviction. We have to see the context within the Quran as it will appear, as it will be made clear later on. In reality, when we are not sure about a fact, then it has two aspects. Sometimes man becomes inclined towards reality, and when the doubts start appearing, and sometimes he moves away from it. Because some of the things appear before our eyes, before our intellect, as in a passing reference, and we think this is the reality, and then doubts start appearing. Though when the doubts start appearing, when we thought it is a reality, it hasn't become a reality. We need to investigate it. And when the doubts start appearing, then it definitely becomes Zann. From this aspect, both are called Zann. Raghib has stated that when an or anna appears after this, that is after this word Zann, then it is inclined towards knowledge, and it almost reaches the status of certainty. Remember the word almost here. And there is two verses quoted over here, 246. Allazina yazunnuna annahum mulaku rabbihim. That those people who think, who have convinced themselves that they are going to meet their Rabb, which means that the system of Rububiyyat is a fact, is a reality. And when they convince themselves, then their Zann becomes knowledge. And second one is inni zanantu anni mulakin hisabiya. And this is in relation to this fact that when we convince ourselves that I am accountable for all my deeds, then that Zann, which initially was that I'm not sure if I am accountable, I can do whatever I like. But after coming to the Quran, we have figured it out that the law of requital does not spare anyone. Then that becomes knowledge, that Zann which we had initially. All these corrupt people in the world, all those who are exploiting other human beings, they are all suffering from this belief that they can get away with whatever they do. In the Quran, it is also used in relation to making guesses, i.e. doubts and suspicions arise in hearts. And for other meanings, see Lughatul Quran by Allama Parvez. Verse 1036, only the Quran can inform about the reality of human creation and its higher purpose. In this verse, the Quran has described the reality and basis of Deen in a few words. The obedience of Haqq is Deen, and conjecture and speculation is the opposite of Haqq. We know Haqq means which produces constructive results, in which appearance and reality there is no difference. What we figure out ultimately, for example, the system of Deen is the only system which can take care of human respect and dignity and also do justice. All those aspects which are related to Islam and Deen are Haqq. Conjecture has no reality when compared with Haqq. Haqq means a definite thing, i.e., in whose being of fact there is no kind of doubt and suspicion. For example, our death is Haqq. There cannot be any Zann about it. The day we are born, within our physical being, within those two initial cells, the death is inbuilt in them. And that is a reality, that is Haqq. Whereas about Zann, there is no certainty, the context in which it is used here. The Quran is Haqq, not Zann. It is preserved for all times, and whatever is contained within its folds can be verified by following its guidance. Remember what previously in our presentations, we saw that from the lips of Rasulullah, he says that I follow my path, or we follow our path, you follow your path. The time will tell who is right and who is wrong. And that is the conviction we need to develop. Whatever is outside of the Quran and attributed to Islam falls under Zann. When the Quranic guidance is presented to people, they do not feel the need to obey it and instead wish to follow after their forefathers or conform to the majority around them. The Quran has warned us by stating that make sure in life to follow that path about which you are absolutely certain to be the correct one. For the physical part, physical destination, we find it out because it becomes visible. But in this case, it can only become visible by using the Quranic light. Otherwise, we are falling Zann. Our life is a one-way street and the clock of life can never be reversed. We need to keep reminding ourselves of this. The law of requital is fully aware of what we do. Inna Allaha alimum bima yafalun. So Quran sums it up that Allah knows what you are doing, which means mu'mineen know what they are doing and what others are doing. We also need to become alim. This will take care of any Zann. Some examples of Zann over here. This slide I added later on. I thought that we should give some examples as well, just to keep them in mind. All religions are included in it because if these are true, then they cannot be at variance with each other. The Quran can be used to evaluate their belief systems, because Haqq in one part of the universe and Haqq in another part of the universe will always be the same. But under religions, we can see that they are at variance with each other. Even within one religion, there are sects, and under those sects, there are subsects, and there are as many human beings. If we see from human being to human being as well, because their desires vary, there is a factor of Zann. What is projected by the media across the world, facts are manipulated to convey a particular carefully concocted information package to make a certain impact. So whatever already exists as Zann, then human beings add more to it. They use it to their own ends, and very effectively they use it for forming opinion. And this goes on in a party system under democracy, that people's opinions are changed, people's opinions are influenced. All concepts of God are wrong and contaminated except the concept given in the Quran, because Quranic concept of Allah's model based on his attributes brings change in us, and we understand Haqq, because without that we cannot understand Haqq in the first place. The Quranic concept is Haqq. All man-devised systems are deceptive and are infected by human biases, emotions, prejudices, relative values which keep changing, etc. Life ends with death, and there is no higher purpose of life. And this is another Zann, whereas we know that there is another life at human self's level. And imagine how big Zann most of the humanity is spending their life by following something which is false. The universe is a creation of chance. This is another Zann, and we see it, all philosophers and thinkers and even scientists, their mind does not even go towards that, find out what is the purpose of this life, because they are not aware of their own self, or they do not wish to know about their own self. Evolution is a random phenomenon and not a carefully directed process following laws and procedures. Not sure about the presence of the human self and its potential to survive physical death. There are no permanent values. Human intellect can figure out relative values and decide on the issues of the human world. And this is also one of the biggest Zanns. Have a question, then ask the Quran. وَمَا كَانَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ أَنْ يُفْتَرَى مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَتَفْصِيلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And this is the last verse for our presentation today. The truth is that it is simply not possible that other than Allah, some other entity can compile a code of laws like the Quran. Hence, a false Quran simply cannot be put together. Just ponder what the characteristics of this Quran are. First of all, that through a practical system, it makes all those principles and laws true which were sent down via wahi previously. Then it explains its laws in such a clear and prominent way that there remains no iota of doubt and suspicion in them, nor any uneasiness or dissonance. And these laws are provided from the direction of that Allah who is the guarantor, that is Rabb, for the nourishment of the whole of the universe and universal humanity. Therefore, no favor has been extended to any particular nation, nor has any been opposed for no reason. This code does not differentiate between one human being and another one. Further reflections on this verse: the Quran makes statements based on facts, and it is our task to figure out further details by using our rational mind and reasoning in the overall context of Deen. Here it states that this book is from Allah and no one can produce anything like this. This is a challenge to us as students of the Quran to make strenuous efforts to convince ourselves that it can only be from Allah. And this is an ongoing task, because if we remain detached from the Quran and do not consult it, then we are likely to get lost by conforming to what is going on in the world. And the weakening of our resolve can be very dangerous, very risky, because whatever we have earned so far, then it goes to waste. This is why it has stated a criterion, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. And over here, Quran has said that when these verses of the Quran are mentioned to them, recited to them, or they themselves go through them, then they do not fall over them as if they are deaf and blind. Mu'minin never accept it blindly. They accept Iman after differentiating between the two paths of life. Blind acceptance is a non-human behavior. The reason for rejecting blind belief is that the self which we require to work for the system of Deen has to be based on 100% acceptance of its message. We should remember that there is no two-way about it. Either we have Iman or we do not have Iman. And Iman is not some otherworldly thing and a roundabout thing that we are confused about it. The Quran makes it very clear. And being on this platform means that we need to discuss it so that it strengthens itself. Without meeting this criterion, we simply cannot strive on the path of Allah. This is why it asserts categorically to carry out salih deeds as a consequence of this Iman on the path of Allah. No salih deeds means no Iman. Then this commitment is not for one day or 1 week or 1 year. For the whole of life, we hold on to this rope of Allah and never let differences come between us, not a naive agreement with Allah. Human beings want evidence before making a commitment as serious as giving their life and possessions in the path of Allah. I've quoted a verse here. Here the Quran declares that if we understand it and then follow its value system, then we will figure out that it confirms the truth of previous wahi and what was revealed to previous messengers. This point is important as this thought does arise in our mind that what was the state of those people prior to the Quran? What kind of guidance did they receive? The Quran makes it clear that all people received wahi according to the state of development of their era. It is obvious that it was not as detailed as the Quran is, because this has to meet the needs of the highly developed psyche of human beings, part of the evolutionary process. Because in today's world, human beings have developed their cognitive potential tremendously. And if we look at those people like Eric Fromm, Carl Jung, and others, even in today's world, Jordan Peterson, one of the clinical psychologists from Canada, if we look at watch some of his videos, we will see that human mind has developed significantly. And the answers these minds are now looking for are contained in the Quran. And we have a significant advantage because we have understood these things and we can always pass it on to them. And also to be very pleased that we have come to the Quran, and as a result, we have developed our potentials to a significantly higher level than ordinary people around us, and we are in a position to pass it on to others, make them understand. Then the verse factually and comprehensively sums up by stating, وَتَفْصِيلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, includes and explains the details in the book separately as well as a whole, which leave no anxiety and intellectual dissonance, and has arrived from the direction of Rabb of all the words. Establish Rububiyyat as part of the system of Deen and see the results as described within its folds. This will lead to avoiding wasting human efforts on aimless and meaningless pursuits. So it conserves time. It saves us our time, and we do not waste a very important part of our life in aimless pursuits, and will lead to acquiring developed selves, which will become evidence of Allah being Rabbil Alameen. Here we need to pause and let the importance of Rabbil Alameen sink in our heart and mind. This should lead into the expanse of the universes placed within reach of our developed selves, and has all the potentials to reach far beyond the visible physical limits of this world. And Quran says, وَسَارِعُوا إِلَىٰ مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. We can take this verse literally as well as metaphorically. It makes no difference, because we are dealing with someone who can turn things from metaphors to reality. So because Quran has said that whatever you wish, you will get it, and we got something beyond that as well. So over here, what Quran is saying is that you are dealing with Rabbil Alameen, who has the responsibility of Rububiyyat all over the universe and for all times, and you should take part in this process of Rububiyyat as human beings and create your world on those lines for which the guidance has been provided in the Quran. Arrive quickly under the protection of your Rabb and acquire that Jannat which is spread across the highs and lows of the universe. This Jannat is prepared for those who are muttaqi, i.e. take care of the laws of Allah. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.